Welcome aboard to all our attendees today. We are very excited to partner with Sipping Thoughts, BW Business World, and Lean in India to bring you a session on running the marathon with business leader Shikha Sharma. This is one of our many sessions in Leadership Series, a program that brings thought leaders from different walks of life to talk about their words of wisdom on varied topics and their life learnings. I'm Urvi Juneja, chapter leader at Lean in India. Just briefly about our partners, let me start with Sipping Thoughts. Sipping Thoughts is a multi-platform media company co-founded by Sukirti Gupta and Meeta Gudgutia. It was set up keeping in mind the tagline, Real Women, Real Thoughts, a no judgment platform where they want to create a network of women for women. About BW Business World. BW Business World, a fortnightly magazine launched more than 3 decades ago, is amongst India's largest and the most respected business magazines. BW team prides itself in spotting key trends in economy and business. It has done this consistently over decades, whether it is spotting the rise of the IT sector in the 90s, the pharma and the telecom industry trend in the late 90s, or the social media, healthcare, and e-tailing revolution in recent times. And now about Lean in India. Lean in India is the official national chapter for Lean in India. It is a community founded by Facebook's COO, Sheryl Sandberg, that empowers women towards their ambitions. Lean in India aims to contribute towards encouraging more women in leadership positions through peer circles, campaigns, collaborations, and events. Our aim is to increase representation of women in leadership positions by enabling women in workforce. Coming to our speaker, Mrs. Shikha Sharma, she was the managing director and CEO of Axis Bank, India's third largest private sector bank from June 2009 up to December 2018. As a leader adept at managing change, she led the bank on a transformation journey from being primarily a corporate lender to a bank with strong retail deposit franchise and a balanced lending book. She has more than 3 decades of experience in the financial sector, having begun her career with ICICI Bank in 1980. Mrs. Sharma was a member of RBI's Technical Advisory Committee, RBI's panel on financial inclusion, the Committee on Comprehensive Financial Services for Small Businesses and Low-Income Households. She has chaired CII's National Committee on Banking from 2015 to 2017. Mrs. Shikha Sharma is also an independent director on the boards of Ambuja Cements Limited, Mahindra & Mahindra, Tech Mahindra, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, and Tata Consumer Products. She's a member of the board of directors of IIM Lucknow, a member of the advisory board of Bridgespan, and an advisor to several companies. In our session today, Running the Marathon, Shikha Sharma will share with us about how to run your career marathon, or basically how to lengthen the relationship with your career. The session will focus on how to plan a career spanning a long life and how to stretch the life of your career to cover a major part of your life. With this, I want to now hand over to Anurag Batra, a first-generation entrepreneur, media mogul, only alumni to be on the board of MDI and chairman BW Business World, and Sukirti Gupta, co-founder Sipping Thoughts, a lady who strongly believes in creativity leadership for a Q&A session with Shikha Sharma. After that, we will take some questions from the audience. So with this, I hand over to Anurag.
Thank you so much, Urvi. Thank you, Urvi and Sukirti. It's a pleasure to always partner with you, and I look forward to this Saturday evening every month. And today I'm even more excited because the individual, the leader who's going to address is somebody that I have not met, but I've known about her because of her illustrious career and the impact she made on corporate India. And I can say that in 2012, she was Business World's Banker of the Year. So let me start by asking first, welcoming Ms. Shikha Sharma. Thank you, Shikha, for joining us, and a belated happy birthday. Your birthday was 2 days back, so we'd like to wish you. They say the birthday is never over till you get the last birthday wish, so clearly we celebrate that. Let me start by asking you, share your birthday with very strong personalities. Like Indira Gandhi, Rani of Jhansi. Tell us a bit about your own leadership style and what made you so successful.
Oh, well, that's a difficult question, Anurag. But I think I got lucky, and many of us underestimate the value of luck being in the right place at the right time. I certainly think that had a big contribution to play in terms of how my career shaped up. But other than that, in terms of personal qualities, I think it's been about learning. I think what defines me is the fact that I'm always willing to learn, and some of my role models have been people who I've watched, who I admired, but they were always willing to learn. When I was a child, वो घर में सब हाथ दिखाते हैं ना पंडित जी को. So somebody got me to meet a pandit ji, and he saw my hand and he said, "Oh, you're going to study for a very, very long time." And I actually didn't study that much. I did my MBA, but nothing after that. It wasn't like I did multiple PhDs or anything. But I think my life has been about taking every opportunity to learn, and that's why probably that study line goes on forever, because I've been trying to learn all my life. And I think that's certainly helped me in my career, because I've been willing to take chances, willing to try new things, and stayed relevant as a result.
You're being humble. It's a trademark of leaders who really perform without excuses to say that they were lucky, but they keep saying that, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And it may sound old fashioned, but it's true today also, and possibly will be true later. I just want to build on that question. You also, uh, you know, you came from an army background, you changed 7 schools before you could settle in. And then of course you
You
studied
have
in
done
Delhi.
your research, Anurag.
Yeah. So clearly you studied at venerable institutions there, the Lady Shri Ram College in IIM Ahmedabad. Uh, and clearly, you spent a long time in a single organization, and you rose to leadership positions, building new businesses. So you're clearly very entrepreneurial, because even when you joined the bank, you're part of the core team, so to say. And then uh, with the visionary leader who led that bank, I think you were part of the core team that built it. So tell us, were you entrepreneurial from day one? Because, even growing Axis Bank the way you did in almost 10 years, you were very entrepreneurial. You acquired businesses. So where did that entrepreneurial streak came? Because you were an entrepreneur when you were at ICICI. You were not, you built 2 new businesses for them, the securities business, the insurance business. So tell us, where does the streak of entrepreneurship come?
So, I've thought about that quite a bit, Anurag, in terms of why I do some of the things that I do. So, as you mentioned, I changed schools several times. And when you change schools several times, you have very little equity that you carry with you from one place to another, because you might have been a good student and your teachers get to know you, but then you change school and you start all over again. And that, plus the fact that my dad was in the army and he fought 2 of the wars, and I still remember the 71 war, where we used to be worried all the time because he was on the western border fighting it. So you learn to deal with fear and risk in a very ingrained kind of way, and I think that helped me, because for instance, when I was asked by Mr. Vagul to set up the electronics funding group, I had spent, I think, almost a decade in the organization by then. And this was a small group starting from base zero and building it out. But I thought it was an interesting opportunity, and I was willing to take that. And that was the first startup that I did within ICICI. But I think amongst my peer set, I got branded over a period of time as somebody who was willing to do startups. And I think fundamentally came from the fact that I didn't care that much. I didn't have so much baggage. I had not carried baggage back in school, and I didn't carry baggage in the organization. So I was willing to start from zero base again, and build out. And the second thing I think, which is different, especially in the finance world, which can sometimes be hierarchical, that I was not afraid to learn from my subordinates. And I think I've been lucky to have worked with some great leaders, whether it's Mr. Vagul or Mr. Kamath. They had very different skills, or Mark Tucker later on when I went into life insurance. They were all very good leaders with very different defining attributes. And I think I ended up soaking some of that from all of them. But just to come back to the point that I was trying to make, I saw Kamath was another person who didn't, who was willing to learn from anybody and who was willing to teach you very simple things. So when the computer first came, I remember that Kamath actually sat me down and taught me how to use a spreadsheet. And similarly, when I went to the joint venture with JP Morgan, ISEC, I knew nothing about investment banking. It was another of those startup opportunities which ICICI was taking a chance on me, and I was willing to take that chance as well. But I had to learn, and I learned from a lot of my team members, and I wasn't embarrassed about learning from them. I didn't have to say I know it all. I would say I don't know it, and tell me what it's about. And I think that is a defining spirit of an entrepreneur, that you don't have fear of losing something, and you're coming with flex mindset and open mindset to learn and see how you're going to navigate the space. So I think those two characteristics probably help me. And of course, as I do want to repeat, Anurag, that I was lucky that I joined ICICI, and it was an institution which transitioned dramatically, went after the opportunities that the changing economy was giving at that point of time. And being part of the team, I got an opportunity to actually be part of that whole journey.
You're being humble. Just to share some data points, why you were at Axis Bank, the kind of, just to give you, our viewers, just some data points from the banking industry. uh, Typically the NPA is 4%, it's average. But when Ms. Sharma was leading Axis Bank, the NPAs were more like 1.34%. They were less than 2%. So clearly, I mean, that's like being at 30-40% of NPAs. So I can give more statistics, and how the net interest income grew to almost $2 billion. That was a couple of years back. So clearly, you're being humble. But what I take away is that you could deal with uncertainty, and that's possibly the biggest quality a leader has, to be able to deal with uncertainty, especially post-COVID, whether you're a male leader or a female leader. I think that's a quality that will always hold you in good stead. So Kirti?
So, one of the questions I definitely have, especially when you're talking about running the marathon. So, you've been one of the longest serving women chief executives in the banking sector, and you kept a very long tenure. And there's always this debate: should you be shifting around? Should you be going through newer pastures? Or should you grow within the same entity? And which one actually works better? Or do both provide a good path, especially when you're looking at a long term career?
So Kit, one of the things that I tell my children and anybody else who's willing to talk to me on career advice is that uh, the one thing that I've seen over the last 4 decades is that the pace of change only increases. When we started our career, there was this whole concept of mean reversion and stuff will get back to mean. But if we look at technology, we look at consumer trends, actually, you don't see no mean reversion. It If something took 10 years to happen, it takes 5 years in the next cycle, and then 2 years, and then 1 year. And so the pace of change just increases dramatically. Now, in that kind of world, I think it's important for us to stay with that change and not get scared of the change, because you can get scared of the change and stop learning and you'll get outdated. And then if you're outdated, you're going to get irrelevant. So I think seeking every opportunity to learn is an important part of building a long-term career. Sometimes I think blockers are people get very comfortable with the scope, the scale, the fact that they're managing a large team or they're managing a large book, or that just whole concept of scale and uh, power kind of gets in the way of your actually taking up an opportunity to learn. And so the advice I've always given is that don't lose an opportunity to learn, because it is then that you're investing in yourself. And if somebody is willing to invest in you and give you a chance to learn while on the job, just grab it with both hands. So that's one piece of advice I would have. And the second, I think, which has been important, is when there's so much change happening, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to stumble, you're going to fall, and you have to have the energy within you to pick yourself up and start again. And that's important, because otherwise you can just get into a funk and, say, oh, this didn't work out, and so maybe I shouldn't take a risk the next time. And that's really not going to work. So if I had to, you know, in basically distill it into two things, I would say that take any take every opportunity to learn so that you stay relevant, and the mistakes or the stumbles are not the end of life. It's a long life, and you can stumble, you can learn, and as long as you operate with integrity, life will always give you another chance.
And just to, my takeaway
Now,
from
following up on,
is that you're
sorry.
saying get out of your comfort zone. That's how you build new. And second is, I posted something today early in the morning.
Resilience.
Resilience, but I posted something in the morning, and I posted saying setbacks are inevitable. Getting up and being successful again is a choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said, Anurag.
This is what I posted early in the morning today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I clearly you echo that. So
Yeah.
Urvi?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's handed over to Sukirti.
So I want to follow up on that. So as we think, and especially now that we've talked about setbacks, and this is something that a lot of us have a tough time dealing with, especially when we see that we're talking about career and career laddering and in the same organization. And I know that you have been very upfront when you have actually been faced with any kind of a failure, you were very upfront about it. But most of us feel that if we admit that we were not achieving or that we did not actually step up, that would actually hold back our career.
Yeah. So, especially when you come from a position of power and hierarchy, then it becomes very difficult to admit that you made a mistake, because you feel like you will lose a notch in, you know, with your team and the people who are watching you. But I think the world has changed, and this was actually an old mindset. And I think in today's world, if you look at entrepreneurs, so many entrepreneurs fail and they get funding again for their second round, right? So if you look at the venture world, it is willing to back you a second time, provided you have a good idea. Uh, but I think more importantly, if you don't admit to a mistake, then you are hanging on and you can't correct. So I think when you admit to a mistake, you've acknowledged it openly, and you give yourself a chance to change course and correct it, and you also get your team aligned to that. Um, because otherwise, you're otherwise be living a very dual life. You're saying things are fine, but actually you know that they're not fine. So how do you carry your team and get them to change direction if you don't admit that something's gone wrong and something needs to change? So I think actually admitting to mistakes can be a strength rather than a weakness.
Yeah, no, it's good to know because I think that's one of the dilemmas that we all face that when we know things are not going well, how should we actually deal with that? Over to you, Anurag.
Ms. Sharma, I'm listening to you and I'm no wonder you are so successful. Uh, is, is there is an authenticity. There's no other word I can think of. You're very authentic in the way you come across. I just want to ask you that, when it comes to women leaders, I was talking to a promoter 15 years back, very large Indian promoter, very large company, a couple of $1 billion in turnover, much bigger in market cap. And he said to me that women CEOs, Anurag, are better than male CEOs. They're sensitive, they're focused. If you give them something, they don't get distracted. And most importantly, they rarely, you know, commit the things that men do. Uh, and, he had a certain viewpoint and he actually had 2, 3 women CEOs subsequently. So he had one and he kind of walked the talk. Tell me, what's your personal view in terms of the women CEOs in India? And do you think women in terms of absolute leadership positions, which is CEO, MDs, are still very underrepresented in India?
Yeah, I mean, the second question is much easier to answer, Anurag. Clearly, India has got a small proportion of women CEOs. I haven't tracked the latest statistics, but if you just look sector by sector, there are very few sectors where you find women CEOs. In manufacturing, you hardly see women CEOs. You see some, but they typically have come from the promoter family. So, so yes, that's the challenge, and I think there's a variety of reasons for that. But are women CEOs different from men CEOs? Um, Hard to say, Anurag. I mean, I find it difficult to go with generalizations around
I'm also
genders.
not a big believer, but
Yeah,
of generalizations. But this was a distilled wisdom from somebody who built a company which was a
yeah,
couple of $1 billion in turnover from scratch, or from a small scale, not scratch. But and that was his view, and he kind of follow up on that. He actually, for a
yeah,
long time, had a lot of women leaders for all his businesses, because I mean,
yeah.
I put it, he said women bullshit much lesser than men.
Maybe I don't know. I
I
don't
didn't
have
say that.
hard evidence of that, Anurag. But what
uh,
I can certainly say is that diversity is a big advantage. So having both men and women on the team certainly will count for greater success because um, people will come with different perspectives, and different lenses. And to that extent, having different perspectives and lenses always helps you to create better output. Um, Men
and
and
again,
women, some men can behave like women and women can behave like men, if we think of the typical characteristics we associate with men and women. So I don't know about.
I mean, I'm a big movie about 5 years back. Ocean's 8 came. I mean, the Ocean's 8 cast was all 8 women. So the
Yeah,
stereotype was turned on its head. I mean, they
yeah.
planned the robbery. So
Yeah.
clearly, I mean, I'm just taking an example, but clearly you can't generalize. And just to build on the boards, I mean, you are on some heavyweight company boards. And again, we had to do a legislation to be able to get more women boards. But I still believe there are much lesser women on boards than there should be. What can be done to correct this? Uh,
So, I think the legislation certainly helps. I used to be against all of this quota stuff, and I think that in a sense, you create a problem for women by making them part of the quota. You know, but at the same time, sometimes you just have to do this to push change at an early stage, and we can see that the legislation has increased the percentage of women directors that you're finding. So you do find now many companies, I think almost 90% of uh, the top 100 companies have women directors now. And there are many companies who have two women directors or three women directors. So, having gone past that mandatory woman independent director, there are companies who are seeing the value of that and saying that let's get more. But the funnel has to be there as well, right? So, where are you going to source these women directors? Until you find enough women coming through the ranks, getting into leadership positions, or becoming entrepreneurs, they, it's going to be difficult to get the funnel to fill the women director roles. So, one of the things I get called for all the time is people asking for suggestions on women directors, and unfortunately, you go around the same circuit and there you run out of names. So we do need to see that funnel come through. I think it will, but all of this is a process.
if I make, a much lesser experience in numbers of years, and hair loss of hair is no antidote or
No, it
proof of
isn't.
experience. But I can say that in my view, the reason there are less CEOs and less board members is because in the middle management, in terms of leadership, we need to have more women. Because if that funnel is stronger and bigger, I mean, then automatically they kind of escalate over a period of time. They get opportunities. And I have another
Absolutely.
belief that growth is a function of opportunity. It is obviously a function of talent and hard work, but that a lot of people have. So if you get an opportunity, a mentor provides you an opportunity, and then you do your bit by taking it, making some. But I think women now possibly get more opportunities, but still long way to go. In a study that we did, in large Indian corporates, Hindustan Lever is the only company that has 42% of the middle managers as women. All other companies are much lesser women managers in the middle, or just senior leadership below the leadership team. So I think if you have more there, then automatically CEOs, board members, you will create more of them. That's my view. But
You're absolutely right, Anurag. That's totally valid. And that's what I mentioned when I said that there needs to be a funnel from which the directors are going to come. And too many women drop out at that, managerial level. They drop out, I think, for two reasons. One is they, at the point that they have children, they kind of give up, and they find it hard to stay the course, and they drop out and then drop off. And secondly, I think it's also organizational attitude sometimes. So I've seen, of course, very early in my career when I was with ICICI, and one of the reasons why ICICI ended up, I think, generating many more women leaders was that ICICI was very sensitive to the fact that women were going to have children and they might need some time off at the period that they're having children, and they should provide the flexibility of giving them roles which are appropriate or geographies which are appropriate, and allow them to take slightly longish breaks. Whereas a lot of other friends of mine from IIM who joined some other companies, uh, they had problems during that period. And there's one celebrated case of a very bright friend of mine who was working with a foreign bank, and when she came back after her maternity leave, they made her in charge of the telex room because they said, oh, we can't, we can't take a chance with you. We don't know whether you will take off or not. And that is like self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you take a bright person and you give them a boring job, then they're going to quit the organization. And when I came to Axis again, I found that there was that reluctance in some of the managers to give a challenging role to a woman around the maternity period, because they felt that she would take maternity leave and therefore we should not give her a very challenging role. And some of them genuinely did it from a caring position, saying that, oh, we shouldn't load them too much because they have multiple things to worry about. I think as an organization, you're then depriving the woman of that opportunity. You've got to give her a chance and see whether she wants to take on that challenge or role, whether she has the infrastructure to manage it. But if we don't give her the opportunity, then she's going to exit or just kind of meander. And so one of the things that I did do was I actually I had a small strategy team, and two of the women that I got into that strategy team were women who just came back from maternity leave. And they both said that, look, if you hadn't given me this, I think I might have been tempted to drop off. But having got this role, I felt like I need to stay in there and manage the transition. And they managed the transition and they did very well. So you're absolutely right that I think both the individual and the organization need to help women pass that period, which can become a discontinuity.
Okay.
So another piece of relationship advice I heard that you gave, and this was at one of the IIMs, was that the choice of a life partner. That's the third thing that possibly holds a lot of women back in terms of kind of managing this work-life career balance. Do you still feel that's more of an Indian phenomenon, or is this something that is actually trending worldwide? Because we are seeing that women are actually in India working less and less as the society or as their families become more successful.
Yeah, I think it certainly makes a big difference to have a partner who shares that core philosophy and feels that you need to grow, you need to work. And I have to say that Sanjay has been very supportive throughout my career. There are times when I was willing to give up and say, look, this is becoming too hard. And he would say, no, don't do that, because um, actually, he said, you chew my head sitting at home, so it's better you continue working. And that kind of worked. But he was willing to take on some of the load. And I think that certainly makes a big difference, because the period of child rearing and, children in their teenage years is a tough period. And both parents need to come in and support if the woman is going to be able to continue her career. We've had Indra Nooyi say that as well. So it is certainly a global phenomenon. It's not just in India. Anywhere, even if you have child support infrastructure, the parents still have the primary responsibility for the children, and unless they share it, it's going to be very difficult for the woman to do everything on her own.
Okay.
One other question I have, and this is one that actually a lot of people are talking about now, especially when we're running the marathon. The question now is coming of ageism as we turn from women and women centric. But a lot of people feel that now a 40-year-old or a 35-year-old is more skilled, more up to date. And as you're growing older, you're expecting more pay, you're expecting more seniority. But at the same time, you're finding that the younger lot that's coming in is also coming in with a lot of skills. So, how do you keep yourself relevant?
I think that's when I mentioned, Sukirti, that you don't get trapped into the trappings of money, power, title. You have to look at, are you learning and are you acquiring new skills? And don't stay, Anurag mentioned, don't stay in your comfort zone, because your comfort zone will make you obsolete very soon. So it's only if you keep trying new things, you're willing to step back, to forth, then I think you build a career in the long term and you run the marathon rather than running just a straight line sprint race. You have to say that uh, you might have to take a cut in salary. You might have to lose a fancy title. Um, but if you're getting an opportunity to learn and be part of a new trend, take that and keep looking for those opportunities.
Anurag, over to you.
See, again, when it comes from a successful person like you, who's been there for almost 4 decades, um, you know, it sounds easy, okay? It sounds very natural to do. But what happens is when there are young women who are at the start of their career, as you know, they're balancing being in a new family, in spite of all the changes that have happened, there is managing your family life in Indian environment is still not easy. It may be better than before. There are children, um, so on and so forth. So how does a young working professional woman right at the start of her career find opportunities, and dare I say, how to find mentors? You know, is there a playbook to finding the right mentor when you talk to 5 seniors or 2 seniors? How do you get the right mentor? Because from your journey, you talked about Mr. Vagul, you talked about Mr. Kamath. They are themselves institution builders, if I may say, and just finding them is lucky, but not everyone gets a mentor of that stature and of that quality very easily. How do you find the right mentor?
So, yes, I talked about Mr. Kamath and Mr. Vagul and Mark Tucker, as I said later on when I went to ICICI Prudential, was also a great mentor. But frankly, Anurag, I've had peers who have been mentors. I've sometimes had people reporting to me who've been my mentors, who felt comfortable coming and telling me that, Shikha, you did this and it was very stupid or very silly, and you should have done something different. So you can find mentoring in different places. It's just, what is mentoring? Mentoring is somebody who is going to give you feedback on what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, and is going to basically watch your back, right? And that can come from anywhere. And so you have to find those trusting relationships, either at the workplace or outside the workplace, if you need to. uh, when you're part of a institution like ICICI, and I was lucky to be part of that, then you actually end up finding a lot of mentors within the organization. So that was a big plus. But yeah, and if you don't get them inside, then become part of a network. Go out and join some networks. So I'm currently part of the Bloomberg Women's Buy Side Network. And one of the things that, it's a small group of people, but one of the things that we do is try to do some mentoring for the people who are part of that network. And most people find that incredibly valuable. So if you don't find it in your organization, go out and be part of a network. You can join an industry forum.
Like
You
in
could have maybe your institutional network. the institution you passed out from. So you'll find various different networks that you should be part of. And we don't give enough weightage to that, but that's important.
Important. I want to ask you, you've done everything. I mean, you started companies, they're successful. Uh, Institutions have gone on, they're doing well. Um, you're on the boards of companies, you're on the board of a premier B school. You had a successful family life, you have two children. What is left for Shikha Sharma to do? Is there a bucket list, or you think you are happy and contented, and I won't say
Anurag,
you're
there's a
retired because you're not the from the number of things you're doing. I'm sure you want to give back and be active. So tell us, is there a bucket list that Shikha Sharma has?
So, a lot of people ask me that question when I retired from a full-time role at Axis. And to be honest, Anurag, whether it was in my active career, I never had a plan. I never knew what I was going to do. I would take it a day at a time and figure out what gave me energy and where I can contribute. And that's pretty much where I am right now. The only thing I'm clear about is that um, I would again repeat, I've been lucky. I've had a great career. I've got to learn a lot. I've had a lot of opportunities. I want to stay relevant. And therefore, I think being on some boards and some advisory roles actually helps me to stay relevant and current. But I certainly want to see that, I've been lucky. I've been given so many opportunities. How can I help somebody else? Um, you know get that opportunity or get that mentorship. That's something that would certainly drive me. The other thing which I haven't found my mojo just yet, but I want to see, I've been fortunate to do things at scale, but is there a societal problem that can be solved at scale and that I can be part of? So I'm actually in conversation with a couple of people to see, is there something that I can do there? One of the things that stays with me, which I'm very proud of my Access tenure, is that the Access Foundation took livelihoods as a goal, and we started by taking what we at that time thought was an audacious goal of trying to help 1 million people get to sustainable livelihoods. And once, I think that was I joined in 2009, so around 2010 or 11, we took on that goal, and we thought it was audacious, but we managed to achieve it in the 5-year time frame that we had set. And so then we made that goal 2 million livelihoods, and now I think they're going for the next two. So that was very rewarding because, as I said, I've been involved at building institutions at scale, and I think our problems are of scale. So being able to help with some of those problems would be exciting. I haven't found the platform yet, but hopefully it will come.
Okay. So, these are more business, professional, giving back. I mean, for example, I want to write 5 books. I mean, I have a long way to retire in spite of loss of hair. But, I want to write books. I want to read more. I want to watch more movies. When the lockdown started, I said I'll watch 4 movies a week. I've watched 4 movies in whole 8.5 months, 2 being in last 1 week. So clearly, what are other goals beyond, like, I like the fact that with the kind of breadth and depth of experience you have, you can really help anything scale up and make an impact, and that's really good. But beyond that, for example, to travel,
Oh,
uh,
I love traveling,
have grandchildren.
family travel. Uh, One of the things, when you're there in the active role, you don't even realize that you've missed out spending that quality time with family. So one of the things I'm enjoying right now is getting more time with family, whether it's my sister-in-law, my mother, or my nieces and nephews. So that's very enjoyable. Travel we would have loved to do, and we did travel quite madly last year. But this year, of course, no travel at all. So, like I've been telling some of my friends, there's going to be a lot of revenge travel next year when things open up. So, all the stuff that got missed out this year, which was on the plan, will have to come right back on the table. But yes, we love family holidays. So, that's something I would look forward to. Uh, I'm a binge gamer actually, so I do a lot of mobile games, and yes, I do watch some Netflix and Amazon Prime as well.
Good.
So, as you're running this marathon, when do you know it's time to actually slow down or change paths? And the second question I have, even when you entered and you entered into Axis Bank, as I understand it, wasn't very smooth. And a lot of times we find that when we are in these difficult situations, how should we tackle it and how can we actually use that and actually bring up our leadership quotient at that time?
So, let me actually tell you about a time when I went to ICICI Prudential in insurance. So, ICICI, of course, there were a lot of women in the leadership team. So, you didn't feel very awkward being a woman. But when I went to insurance, I found two things. I think of the 15, 20 countries in Asia, I was the only woman CEO. And uh, the regulator had actually sent me to represent India at one of the insurance get-togethers in California. And I remember being the only woman in a room full of 1,000 people because women were not present in insurance. So if they are difficult to find in general sectors, they are very difficult to find in global insurance. Um, and then you certainly get a shock when that happens, but the only way to deal with it, or what worked for me, is you turn a blind eye to that. You turn a blind eye to the fact that you're the only woman in the room, that you're not going on the golf course, you're not eating the steaks, you're not joining the drinks party, but you're still going to be part of that network. And until you get over that blocker in your mind, and it's as much a blocker in your mind as in anybody else's, you're going to find it very difficult. So I didn't see that as a handicap, the fact that I wasn't going on the golf course and therefore not part of the gossip, or as I said, I wasn't having the steaks and wine. When it came to the sessions, I would be very comfortable talking about what our business was, what worked, what didn't work. And through that, you end up developing a set of networks and you find some common interests. And I would reach out to some of my peer CEOs and say, is there something that we can work together where I can learn from you, or we can tell you what we have done, which is interesting. So you become a part of that group and that community without necessarily doing all the things that they do. Uh, Now, when I came to Axis, it was similar, right? I came from a very different culture and I didn't know anything about the business. I didn't know the people, I didn't know the business, I didn't know the culture. So I think for me, the first year was really about absorbing, hearing, learning, internalizing, and then actually working with the team in terms of seeing where we want to go next. And I remember, 3 months into my journey in Axis, uh, I said, let's get together and let's go for a joint visioning exercise. And we had McKinsey, who had been a consultant with Axis and had been a consultant for ICICI also, so I knew them pretty well. And they had helped me with some of the other startups that I'd done. I told them to help us organize an offsite where we would go away and talk about what's good at Axis, what we want to change, what do we want to become. And people kind of looked at me shocked and said, we've never done anything like this where senior 40 people are going to sit together and have an open conversation on what needs to be done. And they didn't think anything was going to come out of an exercise like that. But we did go on a 3-day offsite and we did come with some concrete actionables. And to me, that was a turning point. So the fact that you're willing to learn, you're willing to co-create, you're willing to listen, you don't have preconceived notions. As Anurag said, I think that authenticity comes through in even a 3-day period, and that certainly helped me become part of the team. And I have to say, with all the drama that I came in, I have not had a more warm and emotional farewell in any of the other roles that I've done compared to what I had at Axis. And there are lots of people who still reach out, and I think they just it is a wonderful culture and a wonderful set of people. And I feel it was a privilege for me to have led them and built those relationships. But you can only do that if you don't come with preconceived notions and you take people along.
Fantastic. That's so good to hear. So there's a question that's come in from Rojali, from one of the people that is attending, who would like to know how to guide women to restart their careers
To restart their career?
after they take, yeah, after a break.
Yeah. So honestly, it's not easy, Sukiti. Many people have wanted to come back, and it's not easy. But the only thing you can do is reach out to people who've known you and known your work, and through that leverage the networks, and at that point of time, certainly give up this whole issue of comparisons. If at that point you come back and say, oh, this person was my batchmate, and look at them, they're doing this, how can I do this? Then you're not going to be able to come back at all. So you really have to come back with a very open mind and leverage your relationships and people who know you to help you figure out what is the next opportunity.
Okay. There are more questions. I just want to ask one more question. Shikha, again, we always say culture eats breakfast, strategy for breakfast,
Yeah.
Culture is so important in organization. When you, let's say, build ICICI Securities, you build ICICI Prudential, then you came to Axis, and for almost 10 years, you took it from X to multiple X, right? What was the role that you played in building the culture, and what kind of culture did you build in all the organizations that you served?
So I think, I was lucky in the sense that all the roles that I was involved in earlier, I was actually building from scratch. So I had a chance to hire my own team and, learn together, do together, and our successes and failures were all together. So it was a culture of basically openness and experimentation, and be willing to admit your mistakes and keep learning, but have ambition, have serious ambition in terms of wanting to make a difference in the market and wanting to be at scale. When I came to Axis, it had a very different, very strong culture. It's a very warm, very humane organization where people really respect each other. It's a lot less hard driving than a lot of other financial institutions. So that, I think, was a very defining thing about the institution, and you see that in the customer interactions as well. There, I think the front end staff of Axis, who absolutely love, really care for customers, and they will go out of their way to help their customers. That's just embedded in the whole culture of the institution. So when I came in, I think it was important for me to recognize what is different about Axis and leverage that. If I had destroyed what was so different and unique about Axis in trying to bring a very different culture and stamp it here, again, I think we would have destroyed value. So what I did do was try and imbibe that culture, see what it is. Some of it resonated with me because I think a consumer organization does well only if you care for consumers. So that, and you have to be warm and caring. So those were things that really worked. But it was a hierarchical organization. So one of the things that I certainly wanted to change was make it flatter and give everybody a voice. So so there were little things that we started to do. There used to be a branch managers meeting in which only the senior guys would speak and the others would broadly listen. And we changed that into doing work groups where uh, the teams would come and present to the seniors, so that you kind of change the hierarchy on its head and said that we can learn from the team instead of only we having the answers and giving them to the team. So, so I think one of the things that I did hopefully achieve was break the hierarchy a little bit, and it's difficult to do it fully. Even in a 10-year period, it was hard. So people would still call me ma'am after all those years of pushing back. But I think we did have more open conversation. Otherwise, it would have been all ideas come through the hierarchy, and they're not very welcome if they come outside the hierarchy. So I think that was the one big thing that I wanted to really change. Otherwise, I actually think Axis is a very warm, caring, consumer oriented organization. So those are all good things about it. And the other, yeah, so the other thing which, yes, maybe I brought some of the ICICI and JP Morgan culture in was around um, more of a performance ethics and therefore sharper differentiation based on performance. It, the organization had a little bit more of a public sector mindset on saying, let's take everybody along and let's not differentiate very sharply on performance. We did create sharper differences on performance, which has its reactions, and we had some of those reactions. But I think it's settled over a period of time.
Thank you so much. I mean, there is a lot of feedback coming in. There are comments coming in. There's a attendee who's saying, I have a different perspective. I want you to hear that. And she's saying,
Yes.
if a woman is successful only because of a supportive husband, she didn't say that. By the way, Shikha didn't say that. So that's one of the ingredients in success. But is successful only because of a supportive husband, then she is still dependent on a man. I know of some very powerful women leaders who manage their lives beautifully, supportive husband or not. So anyway, but that's a point of view, and we must take every
I'm
point of
sure,
view. It's fine.
I think it is true. And one of my very good friends is a single mom because she lost her husband very early. So yes, there can be different reasons why you don't get that support and you could still be successful. And I have a lot of respect for people who do that. But it certainly helps to have a supportive partner. That's it.
Thank you so much. And I just want to ask my last question in economy. We can't let you, you're a banker, economist. Uh, what is your assessment of the Indian economy right now? And where do you see it going from here? The last 45 days, of course, because of two reasons. One, there was a pent-up demand. Second, certain sectors did well because in COVID, those sectors are geared up to do well. Personal mobility, food sector, technology, and related industries. Uh, there is also the festive season and the wedding season. But beyond that, do you see demand coming back, or do you see we're in it for a long haul before we can see demand coming back in a big way? Because we lost 30 million jobs, and every economist and a CEO will tell you that the economy does only when there are enough jobs in the middle economy, when people are saving money. So what's your prognosis of the economy? And do you have solutions or suggestions to the government of India or policymakers in terms of what they can do to bring the economy back in full bloom?
Anurag, that's a very hard question. And I think there are much brighter minds who are focusing on those problems. All I can say is that I think the economy has shown a fair degree of resilience. So if you look at the results that have come out, and that's why you're seeing all the euphoria in the market, you have seen both organizations and people adapt very quickly. So what has stunned me actually is that I know that when I was in Axis, we were trying to do flexi timing, and it was so hard with all the processes and all the compliance and everything. It was very hard to do flexi hours. And now suddenly you have a COVID and you have a work from home, and everybody's working from home, and all the
Or
systems
work
are
from
standing
anywhere.
up.
People are going to
Sorry?
Goa and work from
Yeah,
anywhere.
yeah, exactly. So
People are
you're
going to
working from
Goa,
anywhere,
hotel.
and the organizations have adapted very quickly to be able to do that. So I am just shocked and stunned to see the pace at which that adoption and adaptation happened. That to me, we sometimes don't recognize how much of a strength that is. That's a big strength because it has forced people to change, and when you change, you start to look at a lot of the waste in the organization and you remove that waste. So I certainly think that organizations would become more productive and efficient. When you become more productive and efficient, there is some pain because some cost gets taken out, some people lose their jobs, but in the longer term, you become a stronger, more productive organization and business. We've seen that happen when the economy was opened up and everybody was worried about competition, what it would do, and actually we found that industry became stronger as a result of that. So I do think that even if there means some correction post the, as you said, pent up demand and stuff, I think institutions and companies will be stronger part of past this particular cycle. So for the long term, it's a positive. The second is, I think if we look at digitization, it's such a big phenomena, and it's such a big opportunity for a country like ours because I think we have created some real skills when it comes to IT, when it comes to data, when it comes to some of the soft skills around technology, that we should be able to leverage that and help the world. That's why you're seeing IT stocks doing so well, because people recognize that here's an opportunity. The world is going to have to go digital, is going to have to go tech, and India has the ability to serve that. Equally, I think India has the ability to serve on the pharma sector, because people will become more health conscious, and we've developed a differentiated capability there. So I think there are some sectors which have been standout successful, but I think on others, what we are not recognizing fully right now, we're going to have leaner, meaner, but more efficient and stronger companies as a result of all of this, and the confidence to say that we can tackle a big challenge like that. That can only have positive outcomes in the long term. As far as
Any,
policy is concerned, I think the government is doing what it's doing. We have to recognize that we do have a fiscal deficit, so there we have to focus on which priority to go after. We can't be just throwing money at everything.
another day, I would want to talk to you about liquidity. And today we are talking to you on a day when it's uh, been suggested that new banking license to large corporates, Indian corporates, should be given, or to existing NBFCs that are doing well, their licenses of an NBFC perhaps upgraded to a bank. I'd want a quick comment on that, because clearly that's an area that you understand really well. Is that a good step? Uh,
I think as a policy, it's an interesting and progressive move. Uh, the RBI has been, I think, a very strong regulator over the years, and they will, I'm sure, be very careful about who gets the licenses so that they are long-term stable players. Um, on that assumption, and I think that's a valid assumption. Getting competition from stronger long-term players can only be good for the consumer and can only be good for innovation.
okay.
But obviously, you've got to do your due diligence well in terms of who's given those licenses, because we
When
don't want failures.
I was younger and started in my career, not long time back. I'm still very young, but
Yes, you
someone
look at.
asked me, industrialist asked me a question saying, Anurag, how do you grow the economy? So I kept giving him like different answers, and he then explained to me is how banking is the engine for growth of any economy. When bank lends money, that creates fresh capital, that creates the GDP. So banking doing well, and one of the reasons we've not done well in the country where public money has been wasted through PSU banks, is because we haven't managed projects well. And clearly, the project, sizes were inflated, and how Indian promoters work. So clearly, if the
Was
banking
that a
system,
banking problem or a real economy problem, Anurag?
that is, I think it's a,
Oh,
it's a, I don't think I
I don't think
compete
there's
with
an
you.
easy answer to that one.
Yes, I
But
think it's
but
a,
it's not.
but
It's certainly not a
thank you.
purely banking problem.
Yes, totally, because there were issues there, and clearly there was a political framework in which banks operate in PSU banks, and sometimes the decisions they
No,
take.
I think there's also a real economy problem, is the point that I'm making over there. That it's easy to say it's all about banking. I think money is certainly the lubricant which allows a lot of the growth to happen. But ultimately, there have to be good projects. There have to be well-conceived projects out there for money to find those projects. So I don't think it's never a clear-cut answer.
Absolutely. Back to you, Sukirti.
I think my last question, any last tips for us as we are all trying to run the marathon? I mean, Anurag is very young, but the rest of us are still figuring out how to continue and how to extend our careers. And with that, then
So
I'll
I would
turn
just
over
go
to
back,
Urvi.
Sukriti, and say, a couple of things. Resilience, I think, is very, very important. Um, Learning and adapting is very, very important. And playing from integrity at all points of time. So the more you can stick to integrity, the more you can be authentic, life becomes so much simpler. So simplify your life, and integrity and authenticity helps you simplify it. And other than that, just focus on learning and focus on keeping your confidence when failures happen, and they will happen, unfortunately.
Thank you. Urvi?
Great. You were fantastic, Shikha. Your attitude to start from zero base, be a lifelong student, having an open mindset, and using every opportunity to learn is truly very inspirational. On behalf of Lean in India, Sipping Thoughts, and BW Business World, I wanted to extend our gratitude and appreciation for serving as a speaker today on our leadership series. Your willingness to share your time and expertise was certainly very valuable. With this, I would also like to thank our audience for joining and their time today. We loved hosting you all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you so much. I would
Bye.
welcome another opportunity to talk to you again because, I think there's a lot that we can learn from you. But only thing I want to say is that clearly you speak your mind and you speak with conviction. And genuinely, when I do this 2-3 times a day, talk to leaders of similar gravitas and achievements, not same, but similar. I mean, everyone is unique and I respect that. I noticed one more thing about you, that you're very comfortable within your skin of who you are. I think my tip to everyone who's younger than me, or anyone, you can learn from anyone, I can learn from older, is be comfortable with yourself. Ms. Sharma is comfortable with herself, and that's possibly why, and I can see from the comments, and Ms. Sharma, you can read them yourself. People are talking about you saying that, you know, to stumble is and then get up and get going. We will make mistakes. All of us do. Sometimes they're part of our kind of growing up, so to say, within our businesses. So I just want to say that that's one thing I noticed. I think that's a big, in my view, it's the single biggest quality you need to do well at anything. So just
So I
wanted
want to
to
just give you one
qualify that.
story
So
there, Anurag.
very happy.
You know,
Love
my
to
brother,
bonus.
uh,
Diwali bonus. Yes.
my dad was, of
Your
course,
both
focused
brothers
on
are
all of us doing
cardiologists.
well in school.
Your both brothers are cardiologists, right?
Both the brothers are cardiologists. So, my parents always wanted us to do well in school. My father wanted us to come top of the class. And I remember, he walking in with his report and he had come 31st in a class of 31. And my father was mad at him and yelled at him. And, he said, "You don't deserve to be my son," etc. And the next exam results, when he brought his report, and my mother called up my dad and said he's come first in class. My father didn't believe it, but this kid actually got that firing and said, I'm going to work at it and I'm going to show that I can make it." So I think that resilience and attitude is important. You will have those failures, and if you just pick yourself and you say, "No, I can make it happen," a lot of the times you can make it happen.
And I'll tell you, sometimes being less expectations also kind of helps. I want to
Yes.
give you very quick 2 stories which match yours. One is in my convent school. I grew up in Old Gurgaon, went to a very good school, and though I went to MDI, and I respect MDI a lot, and I was lucky enough. I'm now on the board, and I'm also chairman of the 15,000 alumni of MDI. But I went to a convent school called Our Lady of Fatima Convent High School in Old Gurgaon. My parents are academicians, and my sister was a topper, and she's 4 years older, and I got admission in that convent school because I'm Sukirti's sister, or brother. And I remember I came 8th or 9th in class 10, and my parents looked at me and they actually, my school at that point was till 10th, and everybody went to Bal Bharti in Delhi, DPS in Delhi, girls went to Mount Carmel or whatever. And my parents put me in a local college, and I became paranoid that I topped both in the 11th and 12th in every subject, whatever be
Wow.
the competition. And then I want to tell you, not many people will believe, but I did clear the NDA in 1993. I did clear, and I remember I came back from Dehradun. Of course, I took a bus, and then I took an auto rickshaw and came. And my mother was buying vegetables outside our home in middle class Gurgaon. And she said, "Tera to hua nahi hoga na." So I went in and I told my dad, "देखो मम्मा कैसे बोलती हैं, कह रही हैं कि हुआ ही नहीं मेरा, मेरा हो गया, ये देखो." So I think sometimes,
Yeah.
parents can be that catalyst. I mean, they're always worried
Yeah.
about you. But sometimes, you can come back, and, if you really put your best at anything, you can do anything that you want. You just need to stay focused, stay in it long enough, and really believe that you can do it, even if it takes a lot of effort, a lot more time than
Absolutely.
I think that quality is needed. So thank you for that story. But I was thinking, your parents got one, daughter to be such a big banker, two to be cardiologist, son-in-law to telecom. Matlab, life sorted the, right?
Yeah, my mother prays hard.
Yeah. And on that good note, we'd say bye and good evening.
Okay.
Have a good weekend. Thank you for being such a sport, and God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.